Come join us. So it's a Dudley Canal tunnel tour, so let's have a look at the history of the Dudley Canal tunnel. Now this tunnel was completed in 1778 for a very good reason. We're in limestone country. We've been mining limestone in Dudley for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Indeed, Dudley Castle is made of limestone, that's 1,000 years old. Now prior to the Industrial Revolution, when you want to try and find something, and carry around the country is a horse and cart. And of course, one horse pulling one cart carries one ton. As soon as you have an extension of narrowboats, large, you can take 30 tons off. Being pulled by one horse. But it's an outrageous for the heavy goods onto narrowboats or barges. That's exactly what the Royal Order was the Earl of Dudley did in 1778. So he built this tunnel to get into his own limestone mine. Limestone got various different uses, mainly today to agriculture. They were back in the Industrial Revolution, war, and making fire. When you want to build one of these tunnels, it's quite a simple process. You don't start at the end, you start at the end. You draw a line across the ground where you want the tunnel to go, and you stick the shafts down to the ground. You lower men the bottom of the shafts. These men are called navigators. That's where you get the two cables from. And they start to dip away from each other, to each other. So the shaft is on the roots of water. That's why these tunnels are being straight. You can see the calcite coming through these depots in the walls. The same stuff you get the tunnel. Acid rain drips through the limestone. There's some tiny particles that he doesn't drip in the soil. This tunnel being built by construction shafts were made below ground. The third one, because they become vulnerable parts of the tunnel. One of them is their level, that's just the one at the end. If you look up there, you see the Milky Way every now and again. It's the first time we do it for 50 years. Church Mill Basin. This was a batting cover. There was a roof on this, and the roof was down ours, which was done 1850. Over on the left-hand side, we've got flooded mine. We call that flooded mine because it's a mine and it's flooded. Over on the right-hand side, we've got Tipton mine. We call that Tipton mine because it's in Tipton. There's no imagination naming these things. Not at all. No exactly talking. We'll see more about these on the way back, guys. That's going to do a sharp left-hand turn. We'll try and get all the way through without touching the sides. We'll get all the way through without touching the sides. I expect thunders on the walls. We'll touch the sides. I won't expect it. Ooh. Basin. We called this a basin, but there was a roof on this. The roof was blown off about 200 years ago. When you brought over to the right hand side, you can see that round, almost like a hobbit entrance. That's the entrance to the Wren's Nest mines. More importantly is the entrance to the Seven Sisters Cavern. It's a fabulous space. Directly behind the boat, this concrete structure goes up the wall, was the entrance to Kettle Mine. And we put a kettle mine in a few years ago because it started to fall in and we risked the basin. Cost us £2 million and a bit of concrete. Directly in front of the boat is the tunnel that we're going to come out of, we can survive in about 25 minutes. And then far over on the left hand side, that strange triangular entrance, it looks like nothing at all really. That's the entrance to Murder Mine. Murder Mine. We'll see that on the way back. So by a process of simple elimination, we must be going through the round window. So guys, as we enter this tunnel, I can ask you to take your seats for me as the boat will touch the sides. Can I ask you to sit down please? Thank you. So as we go into this tunnel, it was imaginatively called the 1989 tunnel. Because we built it in 1989. You can see they don't have an imagination to that. And we built this in 89 just to get us into the mines proper. Because bear in mind, canals and mines are separate. So we built this in 89 so we could get into the mines with a narrowboat. We call it the Waffle Tunnel. Typically it's clear, it lasts a few metres, and then we get into the mines proper. As you look towards the front of the boat, this is what a mine should look like. This is more like the Lord of the Rings bit. And we get a little sense of going underground, but it's still a challenging change as well. top isn't straight. And it's not straight because it's from the fault line to the earth. We do that because the roof will hold itself up. And if you look at what there's no bricks or prop work or anything to hold the roof up. So whatever you do, don't think about the nails of the tons of rock above here. Or the perhaps it in the future. So when you follow this fault line, the left and right hand side pushing against each other. And when it comes through, when we're two fault lines cross, guess what? Just up in front of us, two fault lines cross. Now this is where the castle hill fault and the Dudley don't cross over each other. So we have to try and shore the roof up over the sides. And that's why this big silky sprinkler on the Wales River page around which you can see down the front of the road, that's all this comes from. Back in September 2002 we had a quake in Dudley, which got flooded. 3.4 on the scale. And this one pitch on the head itself up very nicely. In the face of what was quite a reasonable earthquake at the time. Then in a second, folks, the road's going to come to a stop. And we've got a short film over on the left hand side. If you're on the opposite side to where the film is being displayed, then please feel free to stand up. You're
No one knows for certain quite how or why it happened, but around 2 billion years ago, in a warm shadowed pool, a tiny single-celled creature developed. A creature that could divide and reproduce itself, and change to meet the challenges of its harsh environment. A creature that was destined to change the face of the earth and become the father and mother of all life on the planet. The Dudley area shadowed from the sea, but from that single-celled creature had evolved a wide variety of life forms: trilobites, shellfish, sea lilies, and giant corals. Welcome to Silurian times, where the rock around you was a living world 400 million years ago. As these creatures died, their remains sank to the bottom of the sea and were entombed in mud. A steady rain that went on for millions of years. As later deposits were laid down, this mud was eventually compressed to form rock, still bearing the imprints of those creatures that lived and died millions of years before. We know this rock today as limestone, its imprints as fossils. The climate changed, and the age of the trilobites came to an end. The tropical sea was replaced by shallow swamps. Huge trees and ferns colonized the land. Animals followed: insects, scorpions, lizards, and giant dragonflies. When they died, their remains sank into the mud and were in turn recorded in layers of fossilized plant material, which eventually became coal. Many seams of coal were laid down, giving the geological period its name, the Carboniferous. The coal, interspersed with deposits of iron ore, was eventually covered by later rocks and sank many hundreds of feet below the surface. Folding and fracturing of the Earth's crust pushed the deposits of coal and limestone up through the later rocks, and wind and rain over millions of years eroded away these later deposits, leaving Dudley Castle Hill and the nearby Wren's Nest Hill standing proud as we see them today. These hills, with their thick coating of vegetation, remained largely undisturbed as life and eventually man evolved around them. until human technology took a sudden, dramatic turn. The Industrial Revolution. A revolution driven, engineered, and supported by iron. And iron's production required iron ore, coal to fire the furnace, and limestone as a flux to remove the impurities. Hundreds of millions of years of geology came together to make the Dudley area central to iron production and vital to the Industrial Revolution. Initially, the limestone was quarried from the sides of the hill, and as those deposits were exhausted, deep pits were dug as the miners followed the seams. As they went deeper, it became ever more difficult to raise the stone to the surface. The solution to this problem came in 1778, when the Earl of Dudley, who owned the mines, constructed a canal and tunnel into the hill to connect his mines to the Birmingham-Wolverhampton Canal and so to the rapidly expanding network of inland waterways. The tunnel was later extended through Lane, serving the mineral-rich lands on the other side of the bridge and linking the Black Country industries to the riverside. When the tunnel crossed the limestone bed, the rock was marked. Vertical shafts were dug to reach the deeper seams. Branch canals, tramways, and loading wharves were constructed and the stone brought out by boat to feed the furnaces of the Black Country. Huge cannons were created with pick and shovel and gunpowder. Massive pillars of rock left behind to support the roof. In a few moments we will enter one of those cannons. Above us the surface, 80 feet below us, and now flooded, lie yet more man-made cannons. Today the tramways are silent and the limestone bridges are gone. But let us spare a thought to the Black Country miners who carved out these cannons 200 years ago. Danger was their constant companion, and not all returned alive to the surface.
Now guys, if I can ask you to remain seated as we start to move away from where we are now. So interesting fact where we are, it's called Little Tess, and it's an entranceway to Dark Cavern, which is behind the screen. The Dark Cavern is our biggest cavern. It's an enormous space. 2 kilometres long and big enough to get St Paul's Cathedral inside comfortably. It's behind the screen there. And we've locked up Dark Cavern as an entrance many years ago because it's just simply too big for storage ships. The Dark Cavern is connected to Singing Cavern by this tunnel that we're about to go down there. As we get out of the tunnel, the boat will bump back the side several times. The reason it does that is because boats are supposed to come down here. Originally this would have been a parkway. Mining carts pulled and pushed a track underneath us. Now this is the main place where children worked down the mines prior to the Act of 1841. Now the children would pull and push the mining carts along this tunnel between the two caverns. Now today the lights on the right hand side represent 1 candle power for each light. But essentially back in the day this would have been in complete darkness. The children, if they wanted any light, would have had to buy a candle. Well, of course kids couldn't do that. So these would be boys from the ages of about 8 and girls from the ages of 12, because girls worked down the mines as well. At the front of the boat you can see we start to make up some calcite deposits now. And this is called ribbon or curtain calcite because of its shapes. We've got water dripping through the rock above the head and it forms these lovely deposits. Over on the left hand side, any bands or gaps you can see disappearing away from them are bands of volcanic ash. Those volcanoes all today sit in Iceland and Scandinavia. Because bear in mind, 400 million years ago, the tectonic plates of the Earth were in a totally different place. The little stalactites you can see just above the head are called straw stalactites. They're unique. Because they're hollow in the middle, the water comes down the centre and the outsides. And because of that, they only do that for each other and they snap off and drop in the water. And looking towards the front of the boat, you can see that we're going to come out into Singing Cavern. Given us now by the miners because of the way the wind used to sit down to the pillars, causing a humming sound. We've got another video light show for you here. It's quite a nice one, this one. Just like before, if you're on the opposite side of the boat to where it's being displayed, and then the boat stops, please feel free to stand up if you want to. Or indeed, if there's nobody behind you and you want to stand up, then it's perfectly acceptable. There's flashing lights, but no strobes, I should say. And if you do stand up, just be confident your foot in the road. It's always a tiny bit in the dark. It's not too much, just a little bit. So, ladies and gents, we've got you to singing cabin.
Limestone was quarried here on Dudley Castle Hill for hundreds of years, but the arrival of the canal prompted a rapid increase in mining activity, and at its peak, the Dudley mines produced over 100,000 tons of limestone a year. The extraction of the stone left behind a network of vast caverns, which became an attraction for scientists, engineers, and visiting dignitaries from abroad. The Dudley Caverns have also played an important role in the development of the science of geology and became renowned internationally for the quality and diversity of the fossils that have been discovered here. In 1849, addressing a meeting of scientists here in the Dudley mines, the eminent geologist Sir Roderick Murchison claimed that in no part of England are more geological features brought together in small numbers than in the environs of Dudley. In the 1850s, the caverns were opened to the public. Gas lightings were installed, cars laid out, and a bandstand constructed. Many fetes and concerts were held in these mines, with entertainment provided by orchestras, choirs, and military bands. Coloured flags were presented, and demonstrations of blasting carried out. Those events were perhaps the forerunner of today's classical spectacular concerts. And although some of the mines were accessible from the surface, many visitors came by canal boat, just as you have today. Since those times, technology has moved on, and we no longer have to risk the dangers of gas and gunpowder to provide light and sound. But imagine for a moment the awe and amazement of those early visitors as we present our modern interpretation of those events nearly 200 years ago.
That was good music. Oh boy.
So guys, I'll show you a little more about this lovely space before we have to leave it. So if you follow my torch and it goes up towards the ceiling, hopefully you can see the exploratory hole that was dug down there from the surface to try and find out where the limestone bed sits. So that hole itself is about 60 feet below the surface. So they dig down to try and find out where the limestone bed is, which is here now. And then when they found out where it is, that's when they create a quarry entrance. If you look right to the back of the boat, now that quarry itself is about 70, 80 feet down. So they create the quarry entrance, a big V in the earth, so as they can take all the limestone out. Now this is a drift mine, so you just dig into the hillside and keep on going. So they take all of the limestone out the top there, thin bed limestone, and when they start to come down into the lower gallery where we are now, because this is really good quality limestone, they have to leave these pillars to hold the roof up. Each one weighs about 300 or 400 tonnes, and they sit at this angle, obviously, because they have to sit at 90 degrees to where the bedstone sits. Now, believe it or not, this cavern goes on in that direction for over half a mile, and that will take you right up to the boundary of Dudley Zoo, right to the giraffe enclosure if you ever go there, believe it or not. That's where that tunnel is. That's why a woolly mammoth is there, just to protect us. You see on the left-hand side, we've got another mine entrance there. There's one on the right-hand side, exactly the same. You walk through that shaft there. Then at the end, about 30 or 40 feet back, there's another shaft that goes down 80 feet to the next set of mine workings underneath us. So we've got mine workings extensively underneath us, 80 feet below. We've got mine shafts on the left and the right. We've got half a mile in front of us. And this cavern itself doesn't end because this is where they dug back towards Dark Cavern, because they connected the two caverns together now, because it was easier to push mining carts down there than it was to try and take all the limestone right up towards the top, which itself, as I say, is about 60 to 70 feet below. And that's where they dug out a singing cavern. There you go. Now folks, watch your eyes when we put the lights on. In 3, 2, 1. We do a lot with a space like this, as you can imagine. It's the acoustics really, they're absolutely fab. So we have bands that can play down here by appointment, and they have all the normal festivals down here. We had our Easter egg hunt a few months ago, that was quite sweet. Next event will be Halloween, and you can imagine that Halloween in these caverns is quite fun. You can get married down here if you want to. And for licence for weddings, we have 3 or 4 weddings a year. We take the woolly mammoth down for that though, so look a bit weird at the pictures. So I'll explain that to you later. So we're going to move away from this lovely space in about 400 million years of geology. We're going to come right up to date. And you turn up to the spot to sit to. We've got this 20,004. What it might take for caravans into the mine cavern. As you always have to go with it the same way. There's a simple rock which construction is it's a tube top to work towards the area. If you don't take a car with the this is the first time that have been built in the UK for 20 years. In 84, if you saw the spot meritorious, then you got yourself on the telly on blue meter. You can go and move into badge. Well, 84, I can't help this time, because I'm going to take a few minutes. That's how I move into badge. Find the female in the center. That's all. Find yourself at the bottom of the well. Lovely space.
Oh my god.
Wait, I'm trying to get past it, and I'll just there, start something. Nice space in this. So we're back in the original tunnel now. So remember, the first part of our tunnel was built in 1778. It was completed just before the end of the 1790s. So successful was the first part, it went to another part, which is 1.5 miles long. Look to the front of the boat on the right hand side. That's the rest of the tunnel. Just 1.5 miles down there. It's all subterranean, all underground. And there are caverns down that tunnel itself. We run trips down there quite regularly. So you carry on that for a mile and a half and you bring you out, believe it or not, just above the Maryhill Shopping Centre in Brian of all places. The reason why it does that is because that sits on top of what used to be Round Oak Steelworks. Round Oak was one of the biggest producers of steel back in the day, certainly in the Midlands. And it made sense for the Earl of Dudley to take his own tunnel past his own steelworks, because that's where iron was going to be produced. And then bringing us nicely around to Hurst's Cavern. We show you Hurst's Cavern because this is the last place to be mined commercially for limestone. It was mined up until 1924, and then it was closed. So again, if you're on the opposite side to where the demonstration is, you want to stand up, please feel free to do so. So we've got Arthur there, bless him, and he's filling the boats with limestone 30 tonnes at a time, which is that 3 times a day. We've got to try and bring this limestone down. So we've got Ant and Deck at the back there, our 2 celebrity miners, and it's their job to bring down the limestone. Now bear in mind, back in the day you haven't got any electricity down here, there's no power generators, there's no electricity. All you can do is empty by hand tools. So, you want to bore a hole in the rock, you can't get a drill, you've just got to use an iron bar or a lump hammer. So one man holds the iron bar, the other bloke hits it with a lump hammer, and as you hit it, you twist it. And you keep doing that because you're going to bore a hole into the rock. And you're going to bore that hole till it gets around about half a metre deep. That's about the optimum depth, that is. And we call these blasting marks. When you look around the walls, these half holes, there's thousands of them left all over the walls where they've blasted the rock down. So they fill it with gunpowder, about half a metre deep, and then they put a simple fuse on it. Now the fuse is probably just a bit of rope dipped in a lamp oil or something like that, because this is mining, so they're keeping things as cheaply as possible. But to organise all that, we need the gaffer. And as is Mr. Hurst, it's his cabinet floor.
Get ready to blast! Stand clear!
And Mr. Hurst has called stand clear, which is the signal for all the men to leave. But somebody has to stay behind. And this is where our children get involved again prior to the 1840 Act. So our little lad stand there would be a boy around about 10 years of age, something like that. And it's his job to come back and light the fuse. When you get the stand clear, all men leave. The little lad goes back at his candle and he lights the fuse. We use children because they're expendable back in the day. If you lose one, just get another one. We also use children because they're fast and they're small. Because our stand has to light that fuse and run back towards the entrance to get out of danger. However, if the fuse goes out, the stand's got to come back and relight it, because he won't make it all the way back now. So he's small and he can hide under a minecart. But the child stays down here then. So you've got the young lad, 10 years of age, all on his own, under a minecart. His dad and his uncles have all left, and he's just waiting for the explosion. If the stand coughs, he survived. If not, we're going to have another point for tomorrow.
Clear!
Ah, there he goes. Good lad, Stan. I know you survived. He's a worker, that kid is. He survives 7 times a day, anyway. And so it goes on. You can go on 6 days a week, doing the day yourself to Sunday. And guys, you have to take your seats for me. As you're going to move away, the rock is going to be quite close to your head as you move away. We started down now, so I've talked about how you're making these construction shafts. And when I said we fill them all in, apart from 2 that have been left open, you see one, the other one's just going to look at my head now. It's quite a look up for this one, it's beautiful. And it's quite a big shaft. And this one was left open because it was a drop point basically for Hurst Cavern over there for tools and children, all the other bits and pieces. So they all get filled in, but this one's left open. So the colours obviously represent all the minerals above us. So if it's going to be red, it's going to be iron ore or ironstone. And then obviously the white is limestone, the purer the white, the purer the limestone. And then that lovely orangey, almost yellowy colour is clay. And it's been dripping quite nicely there for about 270 years. It's capped off the top with brickwork, but as the water comes down, it does form those little spars of calcite. I'll wait for the front boat to go underneath it while I put the lights on. Oh, pretty good. Folks, I'll put the lights on in 3, 2, 1. Now again, you notice above your head the roof is unsupported. As I said a few moments ago, I'm buying the ground as cheap as you can. You don't break in the roof unless you've got it, it's cost money. Conversely, where we just go under now, we split the archway, and we get to the quarry, and there's the brick to make the tunnel. Now the roof itself is the original one from 1778, the walls were rebuilt later on for renovation. So if you look at the roof itself, you see the bricks are all just slightly different shapes and sizes. The reason why they're like that is because these will be handmade by the women and the children up on the surface. There's no mass production. We go back to the mid-1700s. And the women would make 26 or 28 pence an hour. So apart from having children, people have very close to the bricks, handmaking bricks, it's an easy line of it. I'm thinking it's lovely big open acoustic space. It's the vaulted ceiling of the arch. The two boats you can see rolled up there, they guard the entrance to where Dock Cupboard used to be. So where you had that film Dock Cupboard, it's just the other side, that's the brick wall there. You'll find the Peaky Blinders as well, the two notes have been in the series quite a few times. Certainly the first series where he shoots his mate and drops into the boat, just speeds down the tunnel. On the right hand side is the boat and this is the tunnel. But of course, I said that one horse pulling one cart carries 1 ton. Because they know if the horse down is, then where's the horse going to go? So you've got to find some other way of moving this boat around. So what used to happen originally was the bargeman would have a pole with the six hook on the end, and all you do is just push the boat through the tunnel. And again, it's where we get our expression, I'll barge my way past or barging my way in. If you're barging with a barge pole. But of course all that does is, of course, it's damaged the brickwork, and it was banned quite quickly because it starts to break the bricks off. Thousands of boats there won't go through there again. So you've got to find some other way of doing it. And you saw this on the video on the deck of the boats. What happens is two burly fellas lie in the middle, sometimes on the cargo, sometimes on a bit of sacking, but if the boat is empty, then they're on the track. And they put their feet on the walls, and they start to walk down the walls, and then when they get up to speed, they turn sideways onto their side and they run forward, as if it was an imaginary track running down the walls. And they have to build up a lot of speed. They have to build up a lot of speed, because you get to places where you are now, where it's unsupported, these walls. You can't use the barge pole here because you can't reach. You can't leg it because you can't reach it. So the boat has to build up enough momentum to float. There's several of these cabins all the way down the tunnel. If you didn't, you've only got one choice, because this is a motorway. You've got boats in front, boats behind, constantly moving. You can't stop. So if you haven't built up enough speed, over you go, into the cut, 5 feet deep, in the chest, and push the boat until you get to a point where you can jump back on and start again, because you can't stop. The fine would be so much that you couldn't stop. However, we've managed to leg our boat to a British ready to come out. Now back in 1850, when we legged the boat, we got 16 pence. 8 pence each for you and a mate. Of course, what you do is you tie 2 boats together and double money, or 3 boats and double money. So all you keep doing is just tying boats together to your physical limits. And it's hard work because you do it in the dark. You have to waste money on candles. But obviously it's better than mining, because you don't have mine dust, you don't have industrial accidents, and you don't have all the problems that come with mining. So although it's a hard job, it's better for you to mine. Hello, Phil's boat. Have you had your complimentary ice creams? Lovely, ain't they? Those are in a box in the middle. I still put the box of ice creams in the middle for you. No. Oh. Okay then.
Guys, just remember, I don't know how you made it this far.
Oh, thank you.
Well done.
When you go back, it's
Ask for the I Survived t-shirt. You doesn't have to give away with it.
welcome to the 2-hour tour. You just got to shut up after a bit. And that's brought us nicely back out into our basin. And bear in mind it's a basin, but this was a cavern, there was a roof on this, and you can just see what's left of the roof, that thin crust around the ends there. Now we know the roof had gone, we think, round about the early 1700s. In 1801, there was a watercolour artist called Barber, quite famous in the day, and he was sat in Kettle Mine, which is there, and he did a watercolour looking this way, so we've got a lovely scene of it. So that tunnel is there, this tunnel obviously is here, but everything on the left hand side of the boat is dry land. We can see this on the painting quite clearly. And the entrance to that mine is there, and that's quite large now because of course that wharf wasn't there, and this is all dry land. Now locally that's called Murder Mine. And it's called Murder Mine because in 1958 there's a company called Poole in Dudley, who are mining engineers, they still exist today, Paul still, and they were doing a survey in there in 1958, about 100 metres back they found a skeleton. And the skeleton's identified as a lady, probably in her mid-30s. but she's not named, she's not identified. We think that she was entombed in there probably sometime in the Second World War, because we dated her by her shoes and the corset she was wearing. Her shoes were made in the 1920s, and what was left of the corset, because the clothing had been eaten away by rodents, what was left of the corset came from the mid-1930s. So put 10 years on that, and we assume that she must have been in there sometime in the 40s. But nobody knows why. What was that lady doing in there on her own? Was the limestone that had come down on her, was it post-mortem? Or did it happen as a result of her being in there? Nobody ever knows. So locally it's always been known as murder mine. However, it's not a ghost trip, it's an educational tour. So we've got a big fancy word for the pub quiz if it ever comes up. The Silurian period, which is where we get limestone from. The Jurassic period, where you get dinosaurs, is millions of years away. So this comes first. Now bear in mind, these sea creatures that you saw on the film get squashed to the bottom of the ocean over millions of years and compacted down. That's why it's this colour, because they're crushed up bodies of little tiny seashells. So our fossils are only teeny weeny little things. Now I'll do this for the guys nearest to me, and John will do it for you guys at the front, so nobody misses anything. So don't get too excited about our fossils, they're only tiny. However, you'd be wrong if you didn't have a look at a couple. So if you look up at the top there, you can see that like a bit of a conch shell, with a big arrow that you get if you miss it. So we've got a conch shell you find in the Mediterranean there, and below it you've got a crab with a limpet shell by the side of it. You can still find those today as well. There's a conglomerate there of all shells squashed together, and that strange nugget looking thing that's sticking out there at the front, that's the tail of a trilobite. Now trilobite's quite special of course in Dudley. There's one version of the trilobite, it's like the big wood lice that scuttled across the ocean floor. But it's only found in Dudley, nowhere else in the world. It's called the Dudley bug, it's on our coat of arms. And where it's black there and bubbly just there, that's natural sponge. So again, if you've been quite posh on holiday, you bought some natural sponge, that's what it looked like 400 million years ago. There's even a blasting mark just there, look where we built this entranceway to come in. And where it's black above our head like this isn't pollution, this is because it's a coral reef. So remember, our fossils are only little teeny weeny shells, that's all they are. And just as we come past here, you'll see this, but I don't think I'll see it at the front. So you can see the imprint of a leaf just on that one there? And that's a sea lily. So that's that plant that was bobbing backwards and forwards on the base of the ocean. And then again, all these plants have been extinct by millions of years. So yeah, it's a sea lily, that one is. Little tiny seashells.
Non esistono neanche per la storia parco in questa opera. To się było więcej wody. Była więcej wody.
Thanks, John. Hey, technology back in the day, you're reminded of the early 20s by cars. Of course, the Victoria was assessed by fossils, it's got emergency in the football, and really on the new science. So there's a hunger for them. And if we put ourselves in fossils back in the day, we can sell what we do in an open market. Because fossils can be built and sold. So if you find yourself one of the mining, you can do it. Because if you can try the one, there's going to be a zero like that. Two mines I mentioned very quickly on the way down. So over on the left hand side over there, flooded mine looks like a cave. That's essentially what it is. It's our oldest mine. So you've got three forms of mining. You can quarry it, which is a hole in the ground. You can drift mine it, where you just dig back into the hole. And then you can shaft it where you go straight down underneath it. So that's the second of the three types of mining, if you like. And because it's a drift mine, you just dig back into the hillside and keep on going. And of course that will accumulate water in there, and the water will be building up all the time the further back you go. So it's flooded mine because you'd work up to your knees in water at the back there all day long. It's our oldest mine, that is. Conversely, on the opposite side, that bricked up archway there is the entrance to Tipton mine, which is the mine shaft. So you've got the oldest and you've got the newest time. So Tipton shaft goes down 80 feet underneath as to where the next set of limestone beds are. And that's quite an extensive mine, that is. So that one fills with water. That one, you've got to pump the water out or it'll be completely full. Either side of it, you can see these two archways here now. This is where the boats would shuffle backwards and forwards. Because the limestone is 30 tonnes at a time, and these wooden boats have to be spread all the way across evenly. Because if you put it all in the middle, you break the back of the boat. Now I said that tips of mine there has to be pumped out, so we need a steam engine to pump it out. And that's where this construction shaft that we saw on the way down here comes into play. There used to be a steam engine in what was called Shirts Mill engine. Shirts Mill engine used to pump out the water to Tipton Mine. But of course you've got to feed it with coal 24 hours a day, 30 tonnes at a time. So it was easier to bring the coal boat underneath the engine, which is where we are now, and send the coal up that way with bucket. But it was to try and take it by horse and on the top, at the time. Now that shaft was left open, so it's such a coal chute to go up that way and it gives the steam engine. Now talking about coal, as we start to move back down the shaft, and back to the tunnel, you can see because it's a still moist, the walls, it's a still limestone country. As you move further away from it, you see they get darker. Which cause weeping holes, they can switch holes in the wall. When you think where it goes from this point to the black across it, you can see what the stuff is the roof on. You set the back here, when you leave the holes in it, you leave the pressure of the water moving on it. So when we get to about this point, you can see the deposits from these green holes start getting dark in the middle, like a charcoal vein. That tells us that we're moving away from limestone. We're moving towards coal. More importantly, we're moving towards the Staffordshire Seaman coal. And the Staffordshire Seaman on the inside of Tipton Green was 30 feet thick, was the biggest in the country. Obviously, the coal 6 feet thick. You can imagine this back in the day. The Industrial Revolution, you got coal there as much as you can dig out most of the surface. You've got limestone here, which you need for making iron, as much as you can dig out. And now got narrowboats that would take 30 tonnes at a time. And this really was a win-win place to be in the Industrial Revolution. So much so I had a tunnel. In 1850 there were 41,000 boats a year came through here. 41,000. That's one every 7 minutes. The reason why it's so popular is because it's a shortcut. You get to that tunnel in 3.5 hours. If you're going to do the conventional canal there on the outside, it's going to take you 2 or 3 minutes. Because you want to get to the other side of the ridge, which will be Wolverhampton, because you want to get to Extreme Water in the 7. Now we're going to the sea. So you're going to get to Birmingham, then you go to the Industrial North. So I think it's always a shortcut in some things you do in the place. That's what the big thing is our success. We've got so popular that it will take you 2 days to queue up just to get with this going. So in order to leave it, we've got another tunnel, our Canal tunnel. And the Canal tunnel is huge. We have 2 boats side by side, and the tow pump is also on both sides, so the horses go in and do the other. And when the Canal tunnel was built, it started to build the depth of this tunnel as. It was a little green lane you could use the motorway. It fell into disrepair for many, many years until the early 60s. Authorities all got together, funded the canal trust, and then had to renovate it. And with the assistance of Lockwood funding, we can then open it again. We've already seen about 10-15% of our mine workings. There's got to be 80% of it all underneath us. It's all flooded, the geophysics all, and the lungs get back into it one day. So guys, we come out into a bit of sunshine. All that's reminded me to say is on behalf of the trust, and Ted and John in the middle, and myself in the back, thank you very much for coming and joining us. Hope you have a lovely day, and please enjoy whatever you do.